In an impulsive surge of fury and selfishness, I spoke cruel phrases to my spouse that I desperately longed to wipe away entirely. I declared to him that his affection was utterly superfluous. Those utterances, biting and thoughtless, cut into him with profound intensity, tearing apart the intimate tie we had painstakingly constructed over time. At this moment, I find myself isolated within a dwelling enveloped by profound quietude, my soul burdened with a profound void, aching intensely to withdraw the anguish I inflicted upon him. I'm now wrestling intensely with the motivations that ever led me to convince myself I could flourish independently of his presence. The instant our lives first intersected, it seemed like the ignition of a magical glow. Our rapport formed swiftly, without any strain or effort. His gentle grin and the manner in which he caused me to sense an unparalleled significance were utterly captivating, akin to wandering into a fantastical reverie. We shared bursts of mirth, supported one another's spirits, and built an existence that radiated with joy and fulfillment. His devotion surrounded me completely, instilled in me a deep sense of being treasured, and throughout numerous years, I simply could not envision an existence devoid of his companionship. However, the passage of days gradually altered the dynamics between us. It wasn't because of his actions. I recognized that with absolute clarity in hindsight. The pressures of daily existence overwhelmed the pair of us equally. The burden of habitual patterns, the perpetual tasks around the home, the residence itself, all of it gradually transformed into something resembling confinement. I yearned for liberation, for personal territory, for command over the course of my own life. His displays of tenderness, which had previously brought such solace, began to register as restraints upon my freedom. I rejected them outright, chasing after self-reliance, oblivious to the fact that in doing so, I was also distancing him from my side. He invested his entire being into expressing his devotion toward me. He would unexpectedly present me with bouquets of blooms, prepare evening meals simply out of a desire to please, and murmur expressions filled with admiration and appreciation. Yet, rather than valuing these devoted actions, I drew back sharply. I regarded his unwavering companionship as something entirely predictable, presuming without question that he would perpetually remain at my side, prepared to support me whenever I stumbled. I failed to extend to him an equivalent opportunity to experience being cherished in return. My relentless quest for self-sufficiency evolved into a form of bitterness, as though his devotion represented an encumbrance that I had the right to discard at will. On the particular day when those devastating phrases escaped my lips, I remained completely unaware of their devastating potential. We had become entangled in yet another trivial dispute, perhaps concerning overlooked provisions from the market, disregarded household duties, or the question of which one of us required additional leeway to exist freely. The strain had been building gradually over several weeks prior. He made genuine attempts to communicate openly, to reveal the depths of his emotions, but I had fortified myself with emotional barriers, propelled by mounting irritation. In an explosive wave of irritation, I proclaimed, "Your affection is something I can do without. I manage perfectly well by myself." I had no inkling of how those statements would devastate him internally, how they would systematically erode the collaborative union that had come to define our shared identity, the fundamental core of our existence as a united pair. His reaction manifested as an overwhelming hush, a weighty, all-consuming stillness that echoed loudly in the air. His gaze, overflowing with anguish and incredulity, scanned my own eyes in search of even the slightest indication of withdrawal or regret. However, he refrained from engaging in debate or retaliating with equal force. He merely pivoted and departed from the space we occupied. I anticipated his reappearance later that evening, his effort to repair the rift through dialogue or expressions of remorse, just as we had navigated similar conflicts in the past. But that return never materialized. Instead, he chose to rest in the spare bedroom, and over the ensuing days, our interactions dwindled to almost nothing. I convinced myself that we would naturally resume our familiar cadence, that I could brush aside the occurrence as inconsequential, in line with previous patterns. Nevertheless, at the core of my being, I sensed that an essential element had been broken beyond simple repair. We avoided any discussion of that confrontation thereafter, never confronting the injury that my verbal assault had embedded within him. Yet, the divide separating us expanded steadily. The demonstrations of his fondness diminished noticeably. No additional blossoms arrived. No further visions of our joint tomorrows were articulated. Initially, I overlooked these shifts, but he was withdrawing gradually, not from a depletion of his feelings, but as a protective measure against additional emotional harm. I had inflicted a deep and lasting scar upon his spirit. Several months elapsed before the complete ramifications truly dawned upon me with crushing force. The individual who had previously regarded me with an infinite well of adoration now bore a subdued melancholy evident in his every glance. He ceased confiding in me about the events of his routine, his inner reflections, his inherent kindness. The epiphany struck me like a tidal wave. The declarations I had made had compelled him to erect impenetrable barriers that I found impossible to breach. When at last he informed me of his intention to depart, my entire reality seemed to collapse inward upon itself. He explained that transformations had overtaken us both, that the thread binding our souls had worn thin, and he harbored doubts about our capacity to restore it fully. He confessed openly that his love for me persisted undiminished, but emphasized that such sentiment by itself proved insufficient to uphold our union if it failed to flow reciprocally. In that pivotal instant, the truth crystallized within me. The devotion I had once imagined as disposable was precisely the element essential to my sense of completeness. Presently, amid the echoing emptiness of this forsaken home, I am tormented by the myriad minor gestures of attentiveness that I had dismissed so carelessly, such as his habit of ensuring my supply of morning brew never ran low, his willingness to chuckle at my most inept attempts at humor, his intuitive awareness of moments when only his arms could provide the solace I required. With perfect hindsight, I perceive it all in vivid detail now. The way his consistent devotion had grounded me firmly, inspired my growth, and conveyed to me an authentic sensation of visibility and security. And now, that vital presence has vanished entirely. I have extended pleas for reconciliation, driven by an urgent need to close the expanse that separates us. But the separation has grown too vast to traverse. He has progressed onward with his life, and I hold no grudge against him for that choice. I was the one who systematically destroyed a relationship of rare beauty, under the delusion that solitude would offer superior fulfillment. At this juncture, I stand as a figure who formerly possessed the entirety of what mattered most, only to allow it to escape her grasp in a single instance of hubris. Should fortune smile upon you with the gift of a partner whose devotion runs profoundly deep, embrace them with unyielding tenderness. Avoid echoing my error. By no means repelling a genuine bond merely to demonstrate your capacity for isolation. For when they cease their efforts to preserve the connection, when they choose to depart from your side, the opportunity for reversal has irrevocably passed. I once informed my spouse that his devotion held no necessity in my world, and in its aftermath, I confront only the remnants of a shattered spirit, an unceasing tide of remorse, and the poignant reality that a bond severed through such folly represents a gem whose recovery proves exceptionally elusive.